My name is Lily, and for the past 8 years, I thought I had it all. A beautiful home, a successful career, and a marriage with Mark, my high school sweetheart. We had built a life together, shared dreams, and made promises to each other. I loved him with everything I had. He was my best friend, my partner in life. Or so I thought. I had always trusted Mark implicitly. In the years we'd been together, there had never been any reason not to. Sure, like all couples, we had our arguments, but nothing that ever threatened the foundation of our relationship, and I had always believed that we were solid, that our bond was unbreakable. But the moment I saw the text message, everything changed. It was a Friday afternoon when I first noticed it. I had just finished up a long day at work and decided to check my phone. Nothing unusual. Work emails, a few texts from friends, and then, a message from my best friend, Rachel. I had always trusted Rachel. We had known each other since childhood. She had been with me through thick and thin, and I had always considered her a sister. Mark and Rachel were close too. They'd spent years hanging out together, often texting or catching up over coffee when I was busy with work. I never thought twice about it. But that day, something felt off. The text from Rachel was brief: "I think we need to talk. I don't know how to say this, but I can't hide it anymore." My heart skipped a beat. It was so unlike Rachel to be vague, to say things like this without giving me any context. I immediately called her back, my hands trembling as I dialed her number. "Lily," she said, her voice shaky, "I don't know how to tell you this, but I think you deserve to know." "Know what, Rachel?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My chest was tightening, and I had a feeling I wasn't going to like what she was about to say. I never meant for this to happen, but I've been seeing Mark. We've been seeing each other for months. I froze. The words didn't register at first. It was as if my brain couldn't process the reality of what I was hearing. "What do you mean?" I whispered, feeling the tears welling up in my eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you," Rachel's voice cracked. "But I'm in love with him, Lily. I never planned it, but it just happened. I've tried to end it, but I couldn't." The room started to spin, and I grabbed onto the kitchen counter for support. The world felt like it was collapsing around me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Mark, my husband, was having an affair with my best friend. Rachel's words blurred in the background, but I couldn't hear anything beyond that one sentence. It was as though the air had been sucked out of the room. The woman I had trusted more than anyone, the person I had shared my deepest secrets with, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. "I know this is hard, Lily," she said softly. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I've tried to end it, but I couldn't. I couldn't speak. I didn't know what to say. Every ounce of my being wanted to scream at her, demand answers, but I couldn't find my voice. Instead, I hung up the phone, unable to process the flood of emotions crashing down on me. I spent the rest of the night in a daze, trying to make sense of what Rachel had confessed. How had I not seen it? How could my best friend and my husband have been carrying on behind my back for months? My mind raced, my heart breaking with every thought. I didn't know where to start. All I knew was that I couldn't let this go. I couldn't let them destroy everything we had. The next morning, I couldn't bring myself to face Mark. He was still sleeping when I got out of bed, the sun barely creeping through the curtains. I stared at him, this man who I had loved for so many years, and I wondered if I had ever truly known him. I tried to pretend everything was fine. I went through the motions, showered, made breakfast, even packed his lunch, but inside, my mind was spiraling. How could I confront him? How could I look at him and ask about the affair, about what he had done to me, to us? But I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let Rachel get away with this, and I couldn't let Mark think that everything would just go back to normal. By the time Mark woke up, I had already made my decision. I couldn't keep living like this, pretending I didn't know what was going on. I had to face him. I had to hear it from his mouth. I waited until after breakfast, until we were sitting across from each other at the kitchen table, before I finally spoke. Mark, I began, my voice shaking, I know about you and Rachel. He froze, the color draining from his face. What do you mean? He asked, his voice barely audible. I know everything, I said, my voice firm, but the pain still crept in. She told me. She told me you've been having an affair with her for months. He didn't speak at first. He just stared at me, his expression a mixture of guilt and fear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. Lily, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I was confused. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Mark, I said, my voice cold. I already know. I just want to know why. Why her? Why did you do this to me? I didn't know what I was doing, he stammered. I didn't mean to hurt you. It just happened. I stared at him, my heart shattering all over again. You had a choice, Mark. You always had a choice. And you chose her. You chose to betray me, to betray our family. I was stupid, he said, his voice breaking. I made a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I whispered. And now, everything's changed. That afternoon, I called Rachel. I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to confront her, and I had to do it face to face. When we met, I didn't know what to say. My anger, my hurt, everything was bubbling up inside me. How could you, Rachel? I finally asked, my voice breaking. How could you betray me like this? I never wanted to hurt you, she said, tears streaming down her face. I never meant for any of this to happen. But I love him, Lily. I love Mark. I shook my head. You didn't just hurt me, Rachel. You destroyed my family. You destroyed everything. I'm sorry, she whispered, but it wasn't enough. It was too late. The days after I confronted Mark felt like a never-ending emotional roller coaster. My mind constantly raced between disbelief and anger, between trying to comprehend what had happened and grappling with the pain that coursed through me. Every moment was heavy with a bitterness that was hard to shake off. I had spent years of my life building a future with Mark, and in a matter of seconds, that future had crumbled. My marriage, my family, everything had been shattered, but as painful as it was, I couldn't keep drowning in the hurt. I couldn't let them get away with this. Mark had broken my trust, and Rachel, my sister, my best friend, had stabbed me in the back in the worst possible way. I couldn't just let it go. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I couldn't just sit and wait for things to get better. Mark and Rachel thought they had won. They thought that by confessing, by offering apologies, everything would just go back to normal. They were wrong. The first thing I did was hire a lawyer. I wasn't going to let Mark walk away with everything, not after what he had done. I had contributed to our business, our home, and our family just as much as he had, and I was entitled to what was mine. But this wasn't just about money. It was about taking back control. I had to make sure that Mark didn't get to keep everything that was meant for me and my children. The lawyer, Susan, was sharp and no nonsense. She had seen cases like mine before, where emotions ran high, and people wanted revenge. She understood the personal stakes, and she assured me that she would fight for me every step of the way. Mark and I had built an interior design business together. It was successful, profitable, and had been our joint venture for years. It was the foundation of our marriage, the thing we had both poured our hearts into. And now, I was faced with the grim reality that Mark had been using that very same business to keep me at a disadvantage. While I focused on our family and supported him through his career, Mark had slowly edged me out of the company's leadership. He had made decisions without consulting me, and I had been left in the background, trusting that he would keep things in balance. But all along, I had been blind to his manipulation. And now, after his affair, he thought I would just walk away quietly, taking a small settlement. I couldn't let that happen. The business was mine too. I had worked long hours, managing clients, designing, overseeing projects, just as much as he had. And now I would fight for what was rightfully mine. A week passed before I could bring myself to call Rachel. I had spent the days leading up to this trying to figure out how to deal with her. I had so many questions, so much anger built up. But what was I supposed to say to her? How could I possibly begin to process the fact that my sister, had betrayed me in such a hurtful and cruel way? I called her one evening, my hands trembling as I pressed the dial button. I didn't know what to expect. Would she apologize again? Would she beg for my forgiveness? I didn't know if I even wanted to hear it. But I needed answers. I needed to know why. When Rachel picked up, her voice was filled with hesitation. "Lily," she said softly. "I didn't expect you to reach out." "I don't know what to say to you, Rachel," I said, my voice shaking. "You've destroyed everything. You've taken everything I cared about. I don't know how to fix this." "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice full of emotion. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I don't even know how it got to this point. But You slept with my husband, Rachel," I interrupted, my anger rising. "My husband, the man I trusted. How could you do this to me? How could you betray me like this?" "I didn't know what to do," she whispered. "It just happened. I never thought I'd hurt you, Lily. But I'm in love with him. I never meant for it to go this far." The word stung. "In love with him?" I said, my voice trembling. "You're in love with my husband, the man I've shared my life with? And you think I'm just supposed to forgive you?" Rachel was crying now, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, Lily. I don't know what I was thinking. I wish I could take it back, but I can't." I wanted to scream, to shout at her, to tell her how much she had hurt me, but instead, I held back the tears and simply said, "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Rachel. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. You've destroyed everything we had." "I'm so sorry," she whispered again, but the words felt empty. There was nothing she could say to make it right. She had crossed a line that I didn't think anyone would ever cross. And there was no going back from that. "I need time," I said, my voice calm now, but my heart was breaking. "I need space. I don't know what to do anymore." I hung up without saying another word. The weight of the conversation hung heavily in the air, but I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anything except a hollow ache. It was time. I couldn't keep living like this, stuck in the past, letting them dictate my future. I had a family to protect, a life to rebuild, and I wasn't going to let Mark or Rachel destroy it. I wasn't going to sit back and allow them to tear apart everything I had worked for. I had already started to take steps to reclaim what was mine. I reached out to my lawyer, Susan, and we began preparing the necessary paperwork to claim my fair share of the business. Mark thought he could hide behind his apologies, but I wasn't going to let him walk away without facing consequences. He had betrayed me, and now it was time for him to pay. The more I thought about it, the clearer my plan became. I wasn't going to play nice. I wasn't going to let them continue their affair without facing the consequences. And I would make sure that the business I had helped build was returned to me. I had a lot of work to do, but for the first time since I found out about the affair, I felt in control. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. The days after I confronted Rachel were filled with a sense of cold determination. The emotional devastation from discovering her betrayal was still there, but I had no time to wallow in it anymore. I had a goal now. I wasn't just going to let Mark and Rachel get away with this. They had stolen everything from me, my trust, my family, and the life I had worked so hard to build. And now, I was going to take it all back. I threw myself into the legal side of things. My lawyer, Susan, had been invaluable so far. She understood the emotional toll this was taking on me, but she was also sharp and focused, ensuring that we didn't miss any detail. Mark may have been trying to minimize things with his excuses and half-hearted apologies, but I wasn't about to let him walk away with everything. The first step was dealing with the business. Mark and I had built it together, but he had started taking more control in the months leading up to our split. He thought I was just the supportive wife who stood behind him, but I had always been an integral part of that company. And now, I was going to make sure the company reflected my contributions. I knew Mark wasn't going to give up the business without a fight. The first legal papers we received from his attorney were laughable, a small, barely negotiable offer that suggested he wanted to minimize my share of the company. It was clear he thought he could strong-arm me into accepting less than what I was entitled to. But Susan and I were ready. "Mark is testing the waters," Susan said after reviewing the settlement offer. "He's counting on you being emotionally compromised and accepting something smaller than you deserve. But we won't let him get away with it." I nodded, taking in the words. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't about revenge for the affair. It was about taking back control, about showing that I wouldn't let him win. I had built this life, and I wasn't going to let him erase my contribution. We immediately countered with a proposal that reflected what I had rightfully earned. The next few weeks were filled with back-and-forth negotiations, each side presenting their case, each side trying to outwit the other. Mark wasn't used to me being so assertive. I had always been the one to support him, to put his career first. But now, the tables had turned. One evening, as I sat in my office working through another round of financials for the business, my phone rang. It was Mark. My stomach twisted, but I knew I had to answer. I wasn't going to let him dictate my life anymore, and this call might be the one where he finally came to his senses. "Julia," Mark began, his voice strained. "I've been thinking about the settlement. I don't want this to go on any longer. We've been through so much, and I want to make things easier for the kids. I don't want to fight anymore." I felt a surge of anger. He was trying to manipulate me again, trying to appeal to my sense of family and the kids, like he was the victim. "Make things easier? You destroyed our family, Mark. You destroyed everything we had." "Please, Julia," he said, his voice becoming more desperate. "I never wanted to hurt you. I made a mistake. But I want to fix it. I want us to move on. I'm asking for a fair settlement. Let's be reasonable." I could feel my heart hardening with every word he spoke. He didn't get it. He thought I would just forgive him, that I would let it all slide. "There is no moving on, Mark," I said, my voice cold and firm. "You don't get to destroy our marriage and then ask for a fair settlement. The damage is done, and now you'll face the consequences." I hung up before he could say anything else. There was no going back. I was done listening to his excuses. He had made his choice, and now he would pay the price. With Mark unwilling to settle for anything close to what was fair, we prepared for court. Susan worked tirelessly to ensure that we had all the necessary evidence, including my involvement in the company and my contribution to its growth. We would make sure that the judge understood just how much of the business belonged to me. The tension in the air was palpable. Every time I saw Mark, whether it was in meetings or through his lawyer, I felt a new surge of resentment. He had betrayed me in the worst way, and now he thought he could get away with treating me like I didn't matter, but I wasn't backing down. "I want this to be over," I said to Susan one evening as we prepared our case. "I'm so tired of the fighting. I just want what's mine." Susan looked at me with understanding. "You're doing the right thing, Julia. You've been through so much. But remember, this isn't just about money. This is about standing up for yourself and your children. You deserve everything you're asking for." The day of the hearing finally arrived. The courtroom was intimidating. There were other people sitting in the pews, each of them waiting for their own turn, their own moment of judgment. But all I could focus on was the man who had been my husband, sitting across from me with his lawyer, looking far too confident. I sat with Susan at the table, feeling the weight of the moment. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay focused. This was my moment to take back control. The judge called the case, and the proceedings began. Mark's lawyer spoke first, attempting to downplay everything, suggesting that I had been part of the business but not as actively involved as Mark. He tried to paint me as a woman who had stayed home, kept the house, and had no real claim to the company's success. But Susan was ready. She countered with evidence of my direct involvement, my contracts, the hours I had put in, the clients I had secured. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady, "I've been a part of this business from the beginning. I have worked every day to make sure it thrives. Mark might have been the face of the company, but I have worked alongside him to make sure everything ran smoothly. I'm not here asking for something I didn't earn. I'm asking for what's rightfully mine." The judge nodded, taking note of my words. As the hearing continued, I knew we had made our case. This wasn't just about assets, it was about showing the world that I had the strength to take back what was stolen from me. The hearing ended, and we waited for the judge to make his decision. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my thoughts running wild. Would he rule in my favor? Would he understand the gravity of what I had been through? Hours later, we received the verdict. The judge had ruled that I would receive a fair share of the business and the assets. The judge also ruled that Mark would have to pay a significant amount of alimony, and custody of the children would be shared equally. I couldn't believe it. It was over. Mark had lost. The days after meeting Rachel and Mark felt like a surreal blur. The reality of my actions had settled in, and I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of control, mixed with a lingering bitterness. I had done what needed to be done, I had confronted them, I had shown them I wasn't backing down. But now the real work began. The road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but I was determined to see this through. Mark and Rachel had thought they could just walk away unscathed, but they had underestimated me. I wasn't going to let them destroy everything I had worked for. I wasn't just fighting for money or possessions. I was fighting for my dignity, my future, and my peace of mind. The first major step in my battle was to take full control of the assets that Mark and I had accumulated together. My lawyer, Susan, was working tirelessly to ensure I got what I was entitled to. We had already started gathering evidence for the divorce settlement, financial records, contracts, anything that could help me claim what was mine. But Mark wasn't making this easy. Despite his confession and the fact that he had already been caught in his lie, he still tried to manipulate the situation. His lawyer, a slick and experienced man named Thomas, did everything in his power to push me into accepting a much smaller settlement. They believed that I would just accept the bare minimum to avoid the public spectacle of a prolonged divorce. I wasn't about to let that happen. "Don't let them play you, Julia," Susan warned as we reviewed the latest offer from Mark's side. "They're trying to take advantage of the situation. They think they can pressure you into accepting a low offer. But you've worked too hard for this to let that happen." I nodded, determined. "We won't settle for less. I'm taking what's mine." With the legal battle underway, I began to focus on the other side of my plan, making sure Mark and Rachel paid for what they had done to me emotionally. I knew that revenge wasn't just about money, it was about making them feel the weight of their betrayal. I reached out to a few of our mutual friends, people who had known both Mark and Rachel for years. Slowly, I began to plant seeds of doubt. I didn't need to drag Mark and Rachel's names through the mud, I just needed to let the truth speak for itself. "Do you really think Rachel is trustworthy?" I asked one of our old friends over lunch. "Do you know what she did?" Of course, I didn't tell them everything, but I dropped enough hints for the rumor mill to take care of the rest. The more people learned about Rachel's affair with Mark, the more they turned against her. In the meantime, Mark's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. He started showing up at my office, sending me countless messages, begging for a second chance. But each time, I ignored him. I had no interest in listening to his pleas for forgiveness. He had lost the right to make excuses. I couldn't let my emotions guide me, no matter how angry I was. I had to keep my focus. And my focus was on making sure that both of them paid for what they had done. Things took a turn when Mark decided to fight back. One day, I received a letter from his lawyer, stating that he was contesting the divorce settlement. He wasn't willing to give up his share of the company or the property without a fight. I knew that Mark would do anything to maintain his control, but I wasn't going to let him win. If he thought this was going to be a simple legal battle, he was wrong. I was going to use everything I had, every legal right, every piece of evidence I could gather, and I was going to make sure that he paid the price. It was then that I realized just how far I was willing to go to make sure I came out on top. I wasn't going to settle for a life where I was second to Mark's manipulations, where Rachel could just walk away from everything she had done. The battle wasn't just about getting my fair share anymore. It was about making them regret everything they had done to me, and as I stood in front of the mirror that evening, staring at my reflection, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. After weeks of legal wrangling, I knew it was time for another confrontation. This time, it wasn't about Mark. It was about Rachel. I couldn't let her get away with the lies, the manipulation, the hurt she had caused. I called her the next day. The conversation was brief, but I made sure she understood what I was about to do. "I'm not going to let you get away with this, Rachel," I told her. "I'm going to make sure that everyone knows what you've done. You won't get to live with a clean conscience after what you've done to me, to our family." Her response was filled with guilt. "I never meant for things to turn out this way," she whispered. "I'm sorry, Lily. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it," I said, my voice firm. "But you can face the consequences. And that's what's coming." The final day in court arrived. It was the culmination of months of tension, anger, and hurt. I had prepared myself for this moment, for the final battle between me, Mark, and Rachel. I had fought for everything, and now, I had to stand before the judge and make sure I received what I deserved. Mark's lawyer put up a fight, trying to undermine my case, but the facts were clear. The evidence spoke for itself. It was undeniable that I had contributed just as much, if not more, to the business. It was my time to shine, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. The company was mine, and Mark would walk away with nothing. The settlement was fair, and I had successfully taken control of everything I had worked so hard for. As I left the courtroom that day, I felt a strange sense of relief. I had won. But more than that, I had regained my power. I had taken control of my life again, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The days following the court victory felt like a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I had gotten what I wanted, the business, the house, the custody of Amelia, but it didn't feel like the victory I had imagined. It felt like I was standing at the edge of something new, something unfamiliar, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to do next. I had won. I had taken back control of my life, my business, and my family. But I had also lost so much. I had lost my marriage, my sister, and the trust one had once placed in the people closest to me. The betrayal ran so deep that even though I had reclaimed my assets, there was still a part of me that felt empty, hollow. I had spent years building my life around Mark and Rachel, around the family we were supposed to have, around the dreams we had shared. And now, all of that was gone. In its place, I was left with a new reality, one that didn't include Mark, and one that would never be the same again. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel. The anger, the sadness, the betrayal, it all came rushing to the surface. I cried, not just for the loss of my marriage, but for the loss of my own self. I had spent so many years focused on the needs of others, Mark, the kids, the business, that I had lost sight of myself. I had let others define me, and in doing so, I had forgotten who I was. But now, I was ready to find that person again. It wasn't going to be easy, and I knew it would take time. Healing doesn't happen overnight, especially not after something as deeply painful as betrayal. But I was determined to rebuild. For myself, for Amelia, and for my future. I spent a lot of time reflecting, sorting through my feelings, and deciding what I wanted from the future. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let their mistakes shape the rest of my life. I started making small changes, things that would help me regain control and start fresh. I went back to the things I had once loved, the hobbies and passions I had set aside for the sake of others. I started working on my fitness again, taking long walks in the mornings to clear my mind. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, people who had always supported me but whom I had distanced myself from during my marriage. Most importantly, I focused on Amelia. She was my rock through all of this, and I knew I had to be strong for her. She had already been through so much, and I needed to provide her with a stable, loving environment. together, we were going to build a new life. It was about 6 months after the court ruling that I realized I was finally starting to feel like myself again. I had taken control of the business, built new relationships with clients, and hired a new team. The interior design firm was thriving, and I was thriving with it. It wasn't just about the financial success, it was about rebuilding my identity, about proving to myself that I was capable of anything. One afternoon, as I walked through the office, I looked around at the team I had assembled, the people who now supported me and believed in my vision. It was a stark contrast to the way things had been with Mark. For years, he had been the one in charge, the one calling the shots, but now it was my turn. And I had earned it. I had become someone I was proud of again, someone who had fought for herself and won. It felt like the first real victory in months. But the most important part was that I had regained my sense of self-worth, something I hadn't realized I had lost until it was too late. Amelia was growing up so fast. She had always been the light in my life, but now, seeing her so happy and adjusted to the changes, gave me hope for the future. She had started asking questions about Mark, about why he wasn't around anymore, and each time, I did my best to explain it to her in a way she could understand. I didn't want her to carry the burden of our past, but I also didn't want to shield her from the truth. "We'll be okay, Mom," she told me one evening as we sat on the couch together. "You're strong. You always know what to do." I smiled at her, feeling my heart swell with love and pride. She had always been my little rock. She had given me strength when I had none left to give. "Yes, we will," I said softly. "We're going to be just fine." As the months passed, I began to realize that my life wasn't just about revenge or making them pay. It was about moving forward. It was about creating something new, something that was mine. I had already taken back what was rightfully mine, but now it was time to build a future that was truly mine. I made the decision to sell the house Mark and I had shared. I knew it was time to let go. I wanted a fresh start, somewhere new, somewhere just for me and Amelia. I found a beautiful place on the outskirts of the city, a house that felt like it could be the beginning of something special. It wasn't just a home, it was a symbol of my new life, of the woman I had become. The day I moved in, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't about the house or the things, it was about what I had learned along the way. I had learned that I was stronger than I thought, that I could rebuild my life from the ground up, and that no one could take away my power unless I allowed them to. Mark and Rachel would never fully understand the consequences of what they had done. They had taken so much from me, but they had also given me the strength to rebuild, to find my voice again. They had shown me what I was capable of when I had nothing left to lose. As I stood in my new home, looking out over the city skyline, I knew that the worst was behind me. The pain, the heartbreak, the betrayal, those were all in the past. It was time for me to focus on the future. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And this was only the beginning.